pretty much every day I do have viewers of the channel reach out to me. They have questions. They had one that I definitely wanted to address. They said, what was the bigger kick in the nuts to fans? Was it the destruction of DC Rebirth, or was it the destruction of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men universe after House of X Powers of 10? And I thought it was an intriguing question because really, if you think about like the last 5 or 6 years, those are probably the two biggest events in comic books, in my opinion, just that generated overwhelmingly positive enthusiasm across the board. With DC Rebirth, Marvel fans were coming over and reading Superman. When you had House of X Powers of 10, I have friends that were retailers. There were people that had not been in comic stores for a decade that were coming back in to read that story. And I wanted to talk to my good friend Dylan, the real comic book gamer, because I know he was a fan of both of these. And we'll talk about both situations, how they ended, why they were such a big kick in the nuts, and then we'll have a verdict at the end on which one we think was worse. How you doing, Dylan?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me back on.
If people do not know, if you haven't been over the Real Comic Book Gamer, you should be having your best and worst of the year list coming out soon, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be coming out with that in like the next week or two.
Yeah, so definitely head on over there, and those should be good. Of course, I'm Wes. I'm the host here at Thinking Critical YouTube. If you enjoy this video at any point, definitely give me a thumbs up and let us know that you had a little bit of fun here. So we'll start with DC Rebirth. Obviously, this one was a little bit longer ago. Has it been 6 years?
Oh man, yeah, it's been 6 years now. I think it's been 6 years now. That's insane.
Yeah, obviously, Geoff Johns was the architect. Geoff Johns, in my opinion, is the best modern DC writer. He's made a few decisions here and here that I don't agree with, but I wholeheartedly agreed with DC Universe Rebirth and the idea behind it to essentially bring the best versions of all the heroes together into one universe and say, this is the best DC Comics universe that we can put out. These are the best stories that we can tell. And it was so exciting because almost everything they put out initially for the first year and a half was bulletproof. There were so many good books.
Yeah, there were a ton, and also that was when they did they were doing bi-weekly as well, which is really nice. And it was nothing over $2.99 when it started. No book was no standard like 24-page book was over $2.99, and it was bi-weekly, and everything, well, for the most part, was pretty quality, and you got a lot of stuff back that you hadn't seen before. Like Green Arrow and the New 52 was very much a mixed bag. He had some good stuff from Jeff Lemire, but most of it was crap. They brought Green Arrow back to sort of the pre-New 52 Judd Winnick type era, where you actually had him and Black Canary interacting again, which was nice. Like they reset a lot of things. Pre-New 52 Superman was back. They finally gave the fans what the fans wanted, because during the New 52, it was just such up and down, a lot of crap with some decent stuff mixed in. But Rebirth's like, okay, here's our apology for the New 52. Here's what you actually wanted during the New 52, and it was so nice.
Yeah, there were so many good books. Everyone kind of concentrates on Superman because it's almost like a golden age of Superman when you think about Superman, Action Comics, and Super Sons. They're all great. But really, like, Aquaman was really great under Dan Abnett. Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps under Robert Venditti was bulletproof. We had a really good take on the Titans, Dan Abnett as well. So you really had all these characters that have been kind of, well, Aquaman wasn't terrible to the New 52. I don't want to sell Aquaman short of that period. That's one of the few standout titles. But there was so much to love, and there was a cohesiveness, and there was a plan. I think that was the most important part. That when you read that DC Universe Rebirth issue, which they priced exceptionally well, the amount of content you got in there and really teased what they were going to do, it certainly told you that there was going to be a mystery involving Dr. Manhattan in the Watchmen universe, and also that we were going to revisit this Three Jokers. And we start off with, we got Doomsday Clock was that first big series that was going to be the big payoff. You can see halfway through it, something changes. The production schedule, it becomes like a quarterly book instead of monthly. Dark Knight's Metal hits. It's an enormous success. There's no denying that. Next thing you know, Rebirth comes off the trade dress, and it feels like the DC universe just dies.
Yeah, it was disappointing because everything was going so well for Rebirth. I love Doomsday Clock. I think that is the best event book in a long time, maybe of all time, because when it comes to event books, you don't have a whole lot of quality ones, but Doomsday Clock did so well in pushing the universe forward and setting things up. And then for it to just like, okay, it's being delayed by like a month or two, and then, like you said, become a quarterly book. It's like something's going on here. I know Gary Frank isn't the fastest artist, but something's going on here. It's not just this. And man, to see that happen was really disappointing. And then it got to the point where it felt like too many cooks in the kitchen, because before it was like, okay, Geoff Johns is our guy, he's leading us forward, and it's like, oh, but what we kind of want to see what Scott Snyder's going to take the universe. And it's like, oh, we also want to see what Bendis is going to take the universe as well. It's like, and then don't forget Tom King, and it's like you got these like 4 big guys all trying to do their big universe like events, being like, oh, this is what we're trying to do, and it's like, why are you? What happened to what we had with Rebirth and Doomsday Clock?
Geoff Johns said he had moved up to Warner Brothers, and he was going to be a main producer of the DC films, which had some really hard times. So he's going to continue writing, but he was no longer the chief creative officer of DC Comics. That was really the first blow. But, you know, as you're talking, one of the key components of DC Rebirth was the symbol of hope was Wally West's Flash return, something people have been wanting and begging for years. They finally did it. And, of course, you mentioned Tom King. He goes through and he destroys Wally West whole cloth in Heroes Reborn. One of the things people absolutely loved about Rebirth, the new direction for Superman, taking him kind of back to his roots, but then putting a twist on it and making him a father himself. The dynamic between him and John Kent was absolutely fantastic. They bring in Brian Michael Bendis. They take the books away from Peter J. Tomasi, Patrick Gleason, Dan Jurgens, Jorge Jimenez. They give them all to Bendis. He essentially destroys John Kent whole cloth. We're still seeing the remnants of that. It's like Didio went out of his way to destroy everything that Geoff Johns had built. And I do think it was intentional.
So we talk about Doomsday Clock, well, being the best event. I think Heroes in Crisis is probably the worst event. So bad. It was like 12 issues of just crying to.
I think
like
it's 9 issues, but I give you
9 issues. It felt like 12 issues. It was so long. It was just of them just monologuing with the 9 panels, and it was just so.
Oh, and every character didn't understand like their own motivations, and you got
Hal Jordan. What is Will? It's like, have you not read the past like 2 decades of Hal Jordan books? I think he understands what will is.
Well, yeah, he only forged a lantern ring out of his own pure will, but he's not sure what it is. So that sucked. There's no denying that. That was absolutely a kick in the nuts at anyone. That drove people away. People probably have not come back to comic books since they were so disappointed on what was promised, what was being delivered, and then taken away. Now we go over to Marvel Comics. They haven't had a universe resetting event quite like that was received so well lately. But there was a part of the universe, obviously the X-Men universe with Jonathan Hickman, big on execution, maybe not as big on character progression, but big on execution, big ideas, and world-changing events. We get House of X, Powers of 10, basically a weekly series. You get one every other week with R.B. Silva, Pepe the Raz. And by the end, the entire X-Men universe has changed. And it felt like, for the first time in 10, 15 years, something exciting is happening with the X-Men. It's not the same stuff. It's not everyone trying to take God Loves, Man Kills and make it the center focal point of the entire X-Men universe, which has been going on for a very long time. And you're looking at it, and as soon as they started announcing the Dawn of X books, we said on the channel, and people were mad at me. I said, that is far too many books. There are far too many people not named Jonathan Hickman on these, and I don't have faith in a lot of them because they had been associated with Age of X-Men, which preceded it. But it really just goes off the rails almost immediately because it almost felt like Jonathan Hickman wasn't in charge anymore.
It definitely felt like that. When I saw the initial layout of books that we were going to get, it's way too much. When I went to my poll for that, I was just like, okay, I'll read the Ben Percy books and I'll read Hickman's main X-Men, and that's it, because there's so much. It's like, there's no way this is going to be good. There's no way this can be good. And then it got out of hand so fast, just like we are talking about with Doomsday Clock, where it just got like Rebirth and everything got out of hand so fast. Same with this. Like it was unraveled so fast, considering how good Hawks and Pox was, because each issue of that felt like a huge event. Like every time a new issue that was the first issue that I would read when I'd pick up my poll and it was in there. I couldn't wait to see what happened. And then after that, man, did things change quickly, where I was like, I don't even know if I want to read X-Men anymore.
There was so much introduced in House of X, Powers of 10 that they're just now touching on, like 2.5, 3 years later. These are the things that we all wanted to see to begin with. Where's the phalanx? What's going on, with the original Four Horsemen? What's going on with the island and the weird techno-organic virus that we clearly saw during the event? And they just started lollygagging and going off on these really weird directions. You said you're reading the Ben Percy books. Wolverine and X-Force obviously came out first. Those were both really good to begin with. And then all of a sudden they just started doing all this plant monster stuff.
They got ruined by the Krakoa crap. Like, those books are really good, especially Wolverine. Wolverine was one of the best, not just in X-Men, but in all of Marvel. Wolverine was so good. And then, like, it switched to just, he's fighting, like, the newest issue, he's fighting some, like, Krakoan, like, monster now. Like, I don't understand what's going on. It's not interesting at all. I don't care. I hate Krakoa so much. I want Krakoa to just get nuked, because every issue it's just something stupid with Krakoa, or the X-Men are getting revived again. Like, that was one of the worst aspects of it. Is like, it doesn't matter. Wolverine's healing factor doesn't matter because everyone can come back from the dead with Krakoa. But I don't understand what happens. Like, it felt like, I don't know, maybe something editorial or something, because Ben Percy was solid at DC with what he did with Green Arrow and Nightwing. And he was solid at the beginning of this, and then all of a sudden, like, he turned a corner, and he just everything sucks. I don't understand.
You probably don't know this. I imagine you didn't read the Child Magneto this week.
No.
But you get the revelation, all the little extra things that Hickman had put into place, where you couldn't resurrect everybody. There was a stop-by date and everything. Those have all been removed as well, using magic from Leo Williams. So it's been a free-for-all. Obviously, Jonathan Hickman left the X-Men line, and it felt like he hadn't been in charge for quite some time. But it's just so disappointing when you see something. It's revolutionary. Sure, it's an enormous change, and a lot of people weren't going to be completely comfortable with it. But it was something that was exciting, and to not really just be able to pay it off. And now you're just meandering through, and they've just brought in so many, C and D-list talents, like Tini Howard, Jerry Duggan, feed out. Jerry Duggan is writing the X-Men series. The flagship. Like, what is he doing on this book? He's somebody that you put on, the Storm miniseries or something like that. He's not the X-Men writer. It just feels like it's been inundated with these lesser quality writers driving Hickman out. In the events, the events are ridiculous. The Hellfire Gala.
I don't even understand the Hellfire Gala. It's literally just everyone was just dressing up and just going to a gala. I was like, what? How is this a comic book event?
It was supposed to be one issue of Marauders, and they decided to expand it to an entire line-wide event from 1 month.
It was so stupid, because X of Swords was really stupid, but I had some fun with, like, the Wolverine tie-in issues. That's all I read of it, and, like, they were actually pretty fun.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, they were pretty fun. I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. But the Hellfire Gala stuff, I did not understand. It's like literally just dress up and going to a dinner party. How's that a comic book event?
And the Ten of Swords thing it's half Hickman's original Four Horsemen story introduced in House of X Powers of 10, and then the other half was what Tini Howard was doing in other worlds with all kinds of weird magic and stuff. And they decided to incorporate them together and just tell this stupid hodgepodge story of things that never made sense. And there's no sword play. There's not one sword fight the entire book. So they never even delivered on the premise. Needless to say, this has definitely felt like a kick in the nuts. It's something, I did not have my channel when DC Rebirth started. I would have loved to have been able to talk about that when it came out, because I would have been, super excited to share that with everybody. But House of X Powers of 10 did happen early on in the channel. And it was great. I love getting out there and talking to people and all the theories and everything going around. And everyone was so excited. To see it just snuffed out in a matter of months was absolutely a kick in the nuts.
Yeah, that was definitely disappointing with how good it was, especially because the X-Men had like a long time of just sucking terribly. Like, the last thing we had was Matthew Rosenberg on it, just bringing them back for some reason. And they hadn't been good for a while. Then House of X Powers of 10 was so good. And then just for it to go back, it's like a little tease, like, oh, look, the X-Men are good again. Not really. And then they just went bad.
Let's come up to a decision. I think we're going to disagree on this one, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. For you personally, just as a comic book reader and looking at the industry and everything, which one do you think was a bigger sucker punch?
I think I'm going to say DC Rebirth, because DC Rebirth does everything to where X-Men just does X-Men. To be honest, as much as House of X Powers of 10 was great, X-Men has been sucking for so long that it's kind of just how X-Men is now. Like, because they don't know what they're doing. They just don't know. To where DC, like, at least had something, and then they just completely ruined it. And it was the whole universe, too. And this led us to ruining Wally when we thought Wally was back and good. This ruined Superman, where Superman was in a new golden age. We had Green Arrow and Black Canary back, and they ruined that.
John Kent's destroyed.
Yeah, we had the Titans back together, which had been a long time since we had that. It was so nice having the OG Titans back together, and then they ruined that. They put a bullet in Nightwing's head and turned him into Rick. There was so much. What happened with X-Men sucked and was really disappointing, but at the end of the day, it just ruins the X-Men. This ruined, like, the entire DC universe and a lot of the big players in it. Especially because when you get to the end of Doomsday Clock, that finale is so satisfying and sets you up for some great things. Like, you bring back Jonathan and Martha Kent, and it's like, oh man, they're gonna get to help actually like raise John Kent as well. This is so cool. Because during Rebirth, Clark is constantly telling John about his dad. He's constantly telling him about John and like what he learned, and now he actually gets to meet him. It was like, oh, this is so cool. And then we don't get any of that. That was just didn't actually happen.
You know what makes me the maddest about DC Rebirth going away is the Batman who laughs.
Oh god,
I hate that character more than anything in comic books recently. Just so overpowered and overplayed. Obviously plays out or gets paid off in Dark Knight's death metal. It's one of the dumbest, most ridiculous.
It's so
not
bad.
Ridiculous in a good way for comic books, ridiculous in a bad way.
I agree. I thought when he was introduced he was cool, and then he overstayed his welcome, and they just used him in every single story, and then in the end he like fights Wonder Woman in the sun. So that was weird, but
there's a good miniseries.
Yeah, miniseries was really good. Should have ended there. Should not have gone any further.
Me personally, and this is just personally, I understand that it was probably a bigger impact industry-wide was what would happen to DC Comics. And it's affected not more characters because there's so many X-Men or mutants, but so many big-time A-list characters were affected by the DC decision. Me personally, the House of X Powers 10 stuff, not paying it off like it felt like they were going to, and kind of abandoning Hickman's vision and not following through with it. It's more disappointing to me. It feels like more of a kick in the nuts because I was excited for that. You know, I got to meet a lot of people and we got to talk about that every week for 3 months. And it was so exciting. And I haven't got to experience that again, communicating with the viewers and the audience and other comic fans. And I love that. I don't like talking about how bad comic books are. I would like to talk almost exclusively about how great they are, but we just haven't got anything that quality for that long, since then.
It's been a bit of a drought, especially when it comes to event books. Like, they keep announcing, especially DC, they keep announcing new event books. There hasn't been anything that like really, because with House of X Powers 10 and with Doomsday Clock, I'd go there like just day of it when it would drop and just read it instantly because I was so excited.
Get spoiled. Everyone else is going to be talking about it.
Yeah, it's like I gotta read this. There hasn't really been anything like that since that book stopped. So
I mean, King in Black was pretty good. I mean, it delivered on what it was supposed to, but it didn't feel like those books. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely did not. It was good, but it did not feel like a Doomsday Clock or a House of X Powers. It didn't feel as impactful.
Yeah, so we definitely want to hear from you guys if you got to this far. Obviously, you have an opinion. Let us know which one you felt was a bigger kick in the nuts. Also, Dylan, we've had a third member of the crew here talking about comic books. What's the name of the cat?
That's Jimmy. That's who's been wanting to go out the door and keeps coming back and forth. But I know if I let him out, he'll just want back in. That's Jimmy. He's
named after
right
Jimmy
here.
Olsen, right?
Yep, it's ginger, just like Jimmy Olsen.
All right, so that was fun. I hope you enjoyed seeing the cat, and definitely we hit on it a little bit, but I do have a video that's a bit more in depth on Heroes in Crisis and what a dumpster fire it was. So that'll be up here on the end screens if you want to check that out as well. You're not going to believe some of the stuff Tom King did if you're not aware already.